If you come up to me with three fucking go Chechens that don't speak English, I'm gonna pull my gun and I'm gonna shoot each and every one of you.
That was Sean Strickland days out from his UFC 328 title fight with Khamzat Chimaev. He threatened to take Chimaev out on camera. This isn't unusual since both champions have been going at each other for years. This time, however, Strickland took things too far and Chimaev didn't reply with just words. The viral clips. The footage that recently went viral does not come from a sparring session or a hidden camera in a gym. Instead, it comes from a string of interviews, podcast clips, and media appearances that have been chopped up, reposted, and shared millions of times across Instagram Reels, Facebook videos, and X posts. The reason these clips hit so hard is because they are not the usual canned trash talk you hear from fighters trying to sell a pay-per-view. They are personal, they are loaded, and in some cases, they cross right into territory that has the UFC, the fighters' coaches, and even Dana White genuinely worried. The first wave of viral footage centers on Sean Strickland sitting down and going on what fans are now calling one of his most unhinged rants of the year. In one of the clips,
he's already talking about like, oh, if you guys run into each other, you know, blah blah blah. Like he'll have his friends with him, you won't have any.
That setup leads directly into the line that has been replayed and screenshotted across MMA Twitter for days. Strickland goes from describing the scenario to laying out his response. And what
I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pull my gun out and my shoot. I love goats, dude.
The casual jump from threatening to pull a firearm to making a joke about goats is exactly the kind of whiplash that Strickland's audience has come to expect. But in the context of a fight he is about to have with a man whose team has reportedly already had words with him, the clip lands very differently. He continues by drawing a line between how he says he would handle a normal disagreement with...
If he were to come up to me like a man, say, you know what, Sean, you said some things about my dad, Kaderov. And I'm like, well, you know what, dude? You hoard yourself out, not me.
Strickland frames the entire scenario as something he would prefer to settle one-on-one. He says he would be willing to talk it out, even fight it out, as long as it is just two men in a room. But the moment he describes Chimaev arriving with a...
I want to settle this. I would say, let's settle this like a man. But if you come up to me with three go Chechens that don't speak English, I'm going to pull my gun and I'm going to shoot each and every one of them.
The interviewer's reaction is what made the clip even more shareable. There is no panic, no pushback, just a dry acknowledgement that what Strickland just said is, in his words, a fair warning. That single sentence is how the clip ends. And it is exactly the kind of unfiltered moment that fuels the Strickland persona online. All right, well, I think that's a fair warning. The second piece of viral footage is the mirror image of the first. And that is part of why fans have been pairing them together in side-by-side videos. While Strickland is on one camera describing what he says he would do if Chimaev's friends approached him, Chimaev himself is on a separate camera in a separate interview describing...
Я вижу твою реакцию на некоторые выпады Шона Стрикленда, и это тебя не злит, а наоборот, как будто забавляет.
Exactly the kind of scenario that Strickland is preparing for. The Chimaev clip posted to X and viewed millions of times opens with the champion being asked about how he reacts to Strickland's behavior.
Ты в цирк идешь, когда там клоун уступает, у тебя какая реакция должна быть?
Chimaev does not dignify Strickland with the kind of fury that would suggest he sees him as an equal threat. Instead, he laughs the entire situation off, comparing what Strickland does to a kind of public spectacle. The line that follows is the one that has been pulled out and used as a thumbnail across countless fan edits.
Мои друзья подходили даже к Шону, так подходили у него, что так-то все. Даже им говорил, братья, типа я.
The clown comparison was always going to land, but it is what Chimaev says next that turns the clip from a soundbite into actual evidence of physical confrontation. He mentions almost in passing that his friends have already approached Strickland to ask what was going on. This is the first confirmation from Chimaev's own mouth that the scenario Strickland keeps describing in his interviews has in fact already happened in some form.
Не люблю фальшивых людей. Надо быть реалистом.
Ну, раскрутил он, я тебе скажу, интересный этот бой все-таки тоже.
How the rivalry actually started. To understand why these clips are landing the way they are, you have to go back to where this whole thing began. And that takes us all the way to the mats of Extreme Couture in Las Vegas around early 2022. At the time, Khamzat Chimaev was the hottest prospect in the entire UFC. He had just put together a string of dominant performances on Fight Island. He had run through Kevin Holland in a viral catchweight bout at UFC 279, and he was looking for elite training partners to sharpen his game ahead of his next big move. Sean Strickland, on the other hand, was already a fixture at the gym. He was a respected veteran under head coach Eric Nixick, known for his grueling pace, his durability, and a personality that made him impossible to ignore in any room he walked into. What happened during their training sessions has become one of the most disputed stories in modern MMA. And the reason is simple. Both men claim they got the better of the other, and they've been telling completely different versions of events ever since. Strickland's version is loud, detailed, and confident. He has gone on multiple media tours describing how he made Chimaev quit during positional grappling, how he allowed the Chechen fighter to start in dominant positions just to prove a point, and how he then reversed those positions and ground him down round after round. He has invoked coach Eric Nixick by name, saying witnesses in the gym saw exactly what happened. And he has used the story as the foundation for his entire argument that Chimaev is, in his words, fake. The most famous quote from Strickland on this topic comes from a post-fight scrum after his TKO win over Anthony Hernandez in February 2026, where he laid out his version in unmistakable terms. He described letting Chimaev start on his back, allowing the choke attempts, and then reversing the action over multiple rounds until, by his account, Chimaev simply had enough and walked off the mats. Chimaev's version is the exact opposite. According to him, he tapped Strickland multiple times during those same sessions. And the only reason Strickland is so worked up about him today is because he could not handle being beaten by someone he expected to dominate. Chimaev has said there were plenty of guys around the gym who saw him get the better of Strickland, and he has dismissed Strickland's narrative as the bitter response of a man whose ego cannot accept the reality of what happened on the mats. What makes this particular dispute so hard to resolve is that there is actual evidence supporting Chimaev's side of the story, and it comes from Strickland himself. In a March 2022 interview with the Schmo conducted right after Strickland's split decision win over Jack Hermanson, the topic of sparring with the visiting Chimaev came up directly. The reporter put to Strickland that Chimaev had made him tap a couple of times, and Strickland did not strongly deny it. Instead, he framed the sessions as mutually beneficial, saying both men learned from each other and acknowledging that yes, he had been tapped during grappling exchanges. That clip resurfaced in 2026 and has been used by Chimaev supporters ever since to undermine the narrative Strickland has been pushing in every recent interview. Strickland has since tried to clarify what he meant in that older clip. He has drawn a distinction between situational positional grappling, where he says he allowed submissions early as a kind of test, and the overall control of the rounds, which he insists he won. Whether that distinction holds up depends entirely.
I mean, nobody who wants to see two little go-fuckers go at it. You want to see a real fucking American fight this little Chechen or an American soil.
To the rivalry you already believe. When Chimaev casually mentions that his friends already approached Strickland, fans know exactly which Strickland that is. The one who has reportedly walked through that same gym armed before. The viral footage is not happening in a vacuum. It is the latest chapter in a story that has been building for nearly 4 years.
This is the fight that needs to happen.
Yeah, I hate to spoil it for you. I don't think you're going to get on the White House.
Trash talk, threats, and the Newport Beach standoff. The viral clips fans are sharing right now are the loudest moments in a back and forth that has been intensifying for months.
I mean, dude, who knows, dude? You know, I mean, you know, no, dude. Maybe I got to go hang up on Ike or some. I guarantee, dude. I guarantee.
Strickland's commentary spirals into the kind of unfiltered tangent that has made him a viral fixture. Jokes about himself and Dana White, and turns the whole bit into a long, meandering rant that fans have been That is the Strickland that fans tune in for. He never stays on one topic. He pulls from politics, from current events, from whatever he saw on the news that morning, and he weaves it all into the same monologue that started out as a fight promo. The result is content that travels far beyond the MMA bubble, which is exactly why these clips end up trending on platforms that do not normally cover the sport.
Keep hearing Chimaev this, Chimaev this, Chimaev that, but let's talk about this fucking guy. What does the history and facts say about Chimaev?
Strickland drops the jokes entirely and goes straight at Chimaev's character. He frames the entire conversation around the question of who Chimaev really is and what the historical record actually shows.
Yeah, Chimaev, you can fight. You can fight. You know, you got a beard. But let history record it as, you, sir, are a whore.
That is the framing Strickland keeps returning to. He grants Chimaev the physical credit, then turns immediately to character attacks. And he uses his platform to walk through what he sees as a pattern of behavior that he believes makes Chimaev unworthy of his current position. He referenced,
You fled a country, you went back and you got buddy-buddy with a dictator and you fled again. Doesn't matter how good of a fighter you are and will always be a fucking whore.
and eventually leaving again, and ties the whole sequence to the political associations he has spent years bringing up in interviews. You fled a country. That is the kind of language that turns a normal trash talk video into a viral phenomenon. There is no version of that clip that gets watched a few thousand times and disappears.